4 deadly sins destroyed Sodom, but the warning signs were the opposite of what you'd expect. These weren't random bad things. They were steps leading to complete destruction. The first sin made people claim they controlled weather. The second used special iron beds to hurt visitors. The third infected where people sought justice. The fourth poisoned even children. When God sent messengers to save one family, everyone gathered with violent plans. You'll discover these 4 sins and how they brought God's fire. Long ago, a wide green valley spread beside the Dead Sea like a precious carpet. 5 sister towns grew there, but Sodom became the richest of them all. Fields were heavy with golden grain that bent low in the wind. Grapes hung thick on vines, their purple clusters sweet as honey. Gold filled the busy markets every day, and silver coins clinked in merchant pockets. The people smiled at their good fortune. They looked around at their beautiful land and felt proud of what they saw. However, something dangerous was growing in their hearts. They began to forget the hand that had blessed their land. The farmers started talking in a new way. When rain fell on their crops, they didn't thank God anymore. Instead, they spoke as if they controlled the weather themselves.
"Look how we bring the storms,"
they would say to each other.
"Our hard work makes the rain come down."
The merchants grew even bolder with their words. They bragged that their coins could buy anything in the world.
"We can even purchase time itself,"
they would boast in the marketplace.
"Nothing is too great for our gold."
But the worst change came in their songs. Music had once filled the streets with praise to heaven. Now, the songs mocked God openly. People sang about human power instead of God's greatness. They laughed at the idea that anyone else controlled their success. Nobody said thank you to God anymore. Gratitude dried up like a stream in summer, leaving only dust where water once flowed. The people trusted only themselves, yet they didn't see how dangerous this was becoming. Their hearts rose higher than the hills around their valley. Pride filled every corner of their minds. They looked at their rich fields, their gold, their success, and decided they were the reason for everything good. God had nothing to do with it, they believed. This wasn't just confidence in their abilities. This was spiritual blindness that made them unable to see past their own reflection. The Bible warns us that pride comes before destruction, and a proud spirit leads to a fall, just as it says in Proverbs 16:18. The first crack appeared in Sodom's foundation that day. Pride opened the door wide for everything else that would follow. When people think they are gods, they stop following God's rules. That's when real trouble starts growing like weeds in a garden. Sodom's people made a huge mistake when they stopped thanking God for their blessings. No matter how successful we become, we should always remember who gave us everything we have. Do you agree that we should never stop being grateful to God? If you believe people should always thank God for their blessings, comment, "Always thank God," below. However, Sodom's first sin was just the beginning. The second hidden sin would turn their hospitality into a weapon that hurt innocent people in ways no one could imagine. What started as pride soon grew into something much darker. Sodom developed a twisted way of welcoming visitors that shocked even nearby towns. Hungry travelers would walk through Sodom's gates looking for food, shelter, and maybe some kindness. They had heard stories about the wealthy city's generosity. However, instead of help, these visitors found carefully planned traps waiting for them. Guards would smile warmly and lead visitors to special iron beds set up right in the town square. Everyone could watch what happened next, and that was exactly the point. The people of Sodom had made suffering into their favorite entertainment. The rules were simple, but sick. If a guest was too short for the bed, strong men would grab his arms and legs. They would stretch his body until joints cracked and bones nearly broke. If a visitor was too tall, they would take sharp knives and cut his legs to make him fit the frame perfectly. The cruelty went even deeper than physical torture. Beggars received shiny coins that looked like real money. These special coins were stamped with secret marks that only the traders knew about. The starving people felt rich holding their silver. Yet they couldn't understand why no one would sell them food. Traders had been ordered never to accept those marked coins for anything, especially bread. Strangers would starve while silver clinked uselessly in their pockets. They would wave their money and beg for just a small piece of bread, but every door stayed closed to them. One young girl couldn't watch the cruelty anymore. She saw a traveler dying of hunger on the street, holding his worthless coins and crying. Her heart broke for him, so she secretly slipped him a piece of bread when no one was looking. However, someone spotted her act of kindness. Word spread quickly through the town about what she had done. The rulers dragged her into the bright daylight and burned her alive as a lesson to everyone else. The crowd cheered loudly while her cries filled the air. This wasn't random violence or anger getting out of control. This was organized cruelty planned by the entire city. They had created rules to hurt people and systems to cause pain. Hospitality, which should have been a gift to strangers, became a weapon used against them. The ancient world held hospitality as a sacred duty, yet Sodom flipped this beautiful tradition upside down. Kindness died in their town square, and the second sin took root deep in the city's heart like poison in a well. But the third hidden sin would poison the very place where people went seeking justice and fairness. You know what happens when judges become criminals and truth goes to die? Sodom's courthouse, which should have been a place of safety, became a house of lies where justice was every single day. Meet the town's most important judges. People had nicknamed them liar and forger. These weren't meant as insults. They were perfectly accurate descriptions of how these men worked. Everyone in town knew exactly what kind of fairness they would receive. Here's a scene that happened regularly in Sodom's courthouse. A thief beats up an innocent man and steals his money. During the fight, some of the victim's blood gets on the thief's fist. Now, who do you think the judge sided with when they came to court? The thief actually demanded payment from his victim. His twisted reasoning was simple.
This man's blood stained my hand, so he owes me money for the damage.
The judge agreed and ordered the victim to pay. The whole courtroom clapped and cheered for this backwards decision. Witnesses would lie for the right price, making truth into whatever paid them the most coins. Honest families watched in horror as they lost their farms to fake debts that never existed. Men who had worked their land for generations suddenly found themselves thrown out of their own homes. However, if you brought enough gold to court, you could get anything you wanted. Bribe givers received the keys to houses they had never bought. They would point at any property they liked, pay the right people, and walk away as the new owners by evening. The weak had no voice in these corrupt courts. Their cries for help fell on deaf ears. Meanwhile, the strong sharpened their voices like knives, cutting down anyone who dared ask for real fairness or honest judgment. Law was supposed to stand straight and true, like a measuring line used by builders. Instead, it bent like heated wax in the hands of these evil judges. Right became wrong, and wrong became right, depending on who paid the most money. Innocent people learned to fear the courthouse more than they feared criminals in dark alleys. At least criminals were honest about being bad. The judges pretended to serve justice while they destroyed it every day in broad daylight. Justice died in the very place that was meant to protect it. When courts become corrupt, society crumbles like old bread. The third sin had poisoned the heart of Sodom's government, leaving no safe place for good people to turn. Yet the fourth hidden sin would prove to be the darkest of all, changing Sodom's streets into something that would shock even the angels when they arrived. When darkness fell over Sodom, the city transformed into something else entirely. The fourth and most terrible sin came alive at night, turning every street into a place no good person should ever see. In any normal city at sunset, families should be going home to share meals together. Children should be playing games before bedtime. Parents should be telling stories and tucking little ones into bed. However, none of this happened in Sodom anymore. Instead, the streets became open dens of shame where nothing was private or sacred. Songs that once celebrated life and love became wild shouts filled with ugly desires. People treated human bodies like pieces of cloth to be traded in the marketplace. Desire controlled every corner of the city. Nothing felt wrong anymore because everything had become wrong. The people had lost all sense of right and evil, good and bad. Here's the most heartbreaking part of this terrible sin. Even children learned early that selfish pleasure was more important than real love. Night games grew darker and more twisted with each passing season. Innocence died young in Sodom streets. The line between wanting something and taking it by force disappeared entirely. Violence became as normal as breathing. People took whatever they desired without caring who got hurt in the process. Families broke apart like old pottery. Marriage meant nothing more than words on paper. Promises and commitment were just old ideas that people had forgotten. Like ancient languages, no one spoke anymore. The fourth sin spread through Sodom like a disease that infected everything it touched. Mothers abandoned children. Fathers left families. Brothers turned against sisters. Love itself became a stranger in a city that once knew how to care. However, the worst part was how normal it all seemed to the people living there. The city breathed sin like air, and no one even noticed the smell anymore. Evil had become so common that good seemed strange and foolish. When lust takes control, it destroys everything beautiful that God created. Love dies a slow death. Families shatter into pieces. Children suffer the most, learning terrible lessons that poison their hearts before they even grow up. The fourth sin finished Sodom's transformation from a blessed valley into a place where evil felt perfectly at home. What had started with simple pride had grown into something so dark that heaven itself could no longer look away. However, God's mercy would make one final attempt to save anyone willing to listen when two mysterious strangers walked through Sodom's gates on a night that would change everything. Even when a city becomes utterly evil, God still tries to save the innocent people living there. This truth would shine brightest on the night that changed everything in Sodom. Two bright strangers walked through Sodom's main gate as the sun began to set. They looked like regular travelers who who needed a place to stay for the night. Their clothes were dusty from the road, and they carried simple walking sticks like any other visitors. However, these weren't ordinary men at all. They were angels sent by God Himself on a mission that would reveal Sodom's true heart to the world. Lot, Abraham's nephew, spotted them coming down the street toward the town square. He had lived in Sodom long enough to know exactly what happened to visitors after dark. His heart started beating faster as he realized these strangers had no idea what danger they were walking into. Lot had to act fast before anyone else noticed the newcomers. He rushed up to them and bowed low to the ground.
"Please, my lords, come, stay at my house tonight,"
he said urgently.
"Let me wash your feet and give you food. You can leave early in the morning."
The angels wanted to spend the night in the town square, but Lot begged them so strongly that they finally agreed to come with him. He quickly led them to his house, brought them inside, and locked the door tight. He hoped nobody had seen them, but his hopes were crushed within minutes. Word spread through Sodom's streets like wildfire. Excited voices called to each other from house to house.
"New strangers in town! Fresh victims for our game!"
The news traveled faster than Lot could have imagined. Soon, a roaring crowd rushed to his door, like wild animals hunting for prey. They wanted these new strangers for their twisted evil games. Young men and old men came running from every corner of the city. The whole town showed up outside Lot's house, shouting and demanding that he bring out his guests.
"Where are the men who came to you tonight?
They yelled.
Bring them out to us so we can have our way with them!"
That's when the strangers revealed who they really were. The strangers inside Lot's house revealed who they really were. These weren't helpless travelers at all. They were mighty angels sent by God to see Sodom's wickedness with their own eyes. The angels saw all of Sodom's evil that night. Every sin shouted at once through the angry crowd outside. The violence, the lust, the cruelty, it all proved everything God already knew about this evil place. Heaven's patience finally snapped like a rope stretched too far. These angels had seen enough evidence. They grabbed Lot's family and pulled them outside into the night air.
"Run to the hills.
They commanded.
Don't look back. Don't stop. Don't save anything. Just run for your lives right now."
The rescue mission had begun. Yet dawn would bring fire from heaven that would end Sodom's story once and for all. When God's patience finally runs out, the morning sky becomes a canvas for divine judgment. The dawn over Sodom gave the whole world its answer in the most terrible way possible. Dawn cracked open like a giant egg breaking in the sky. However, instead of gentle golden sunlight spreading across the valley, fire burst from heaven itself. The air filled with heat so intense that people could feel it burning their skin from far away. Burning stones began raining down like molten hail from the dark clouds above. These weren't ordinary rocks. They were chunks of fire that split wooden roofs in half and scorched the thick grapevines until they turned to ash. The stones were so hot, they changed the flowing rivers into clouds of steam that rose up like ghostly fingers. The proud market square, where merchants once bragged about their gold, became a giant furnace. Those special iron beds used to torture innocent visitors glowed bright red in the heat before melting into pools of liquid metal. The very tools of Sodom's cruelty were destroyed by the same fire that consumed everything else. Screams filled the air for only a few moments before the burning stones covered them. Then gray ash began falling like snow, burying the sounds, the people, and all their evil deeds under a thick blanket of silence. The city that had once been filled with noise and wickedness became as quiet as a graveyard. Lot and his family ran as fast as their legs could carry them toward the hills. The angels had warned them clearly, "Don't look back, don't stop running, don't try to save anything from your old life." However, Lot's wife couldn't help herself as they climbed higher up the hillside. She longed for everything she was leaving behind: her house, her friends, her comfortable life in the wealthy city. The pull of her old world was too strong to resist. Against the angel's clear warning, she turned her head to look back at Sodom one last time. In that very moment, she froze solid and became a pillar of white salt. Her body became a lonely statue standing on the wasted plain, a permanent reminder of the cost of choosing the past over God's rescue. When the thick black smoke finally cleared away, the beautiful green valley was gone. Only empty desert remained where 5 rich cities had once stood tall and proud. Not a single building survived the fire from heaven. Sodom's 4 hidden sins now lay buried under silent gray ruins. Pride, cruelty, injustice, and lust had all been destroyed together in one terrible morning. The valley that once grew the sweetest grapes and the richest grain would never bloom again. But heaven's judgment didn't stop with Sodom's complete destruction. Did you know King David made one foolish decision that angered God so much he sent a single angel on a deadly mission? In just 3 days, this angel of 70,000 innocent Israelites, not soldiers or criminals, just regular families going about their lives. When the angel raised his sword over Jerusalem to destroy it completely, something incredible stopped him mid-strike. Click the video on your screen right now to discover why 70,000 people died for one man's pride.